There are multiple XRP related Twitter accounts posting that Ripple could buy out Swift for approximately 4.3 billion XRP. Is this real? Is this even possible? Can Ripple buy Swift? Well, I've got the answer. I also wanted to take a look at if XRP is used to do 15, 25, 50% of Swift's volume, what could that do to the XRP price? I also wanted to better understand, can anybody buy Swift and what steps would they need to take to do that? I got all your answers and more, guys, in this video. Let's go ahead and get into it. First, let's understand what's being said here. Ripple could try to buy Swift with XRP. All they would need is less than 4.37 billion XRP. So you're saying that you could buy the Swift banking system for like $10 billion? Does that sound right to anybody? Right? If Circle was just offered, $10 billion for Circle. Circle is a really small player compared to Swift, right? So of course I fact checked this, right? I scanned the document. I said, is there any truth to this claim? The claim that Ripple could buy out Swift for approximately 4.3 billion is highly misleading. It is not grounded in financial or legal reality. I also want to point out that this person, Crypto Queen, XRP Queen, has been pushing this ban exchange. So I wanted to look into ban exchange, and ban exchange appears to be a scam. So yikes. This person's pushing ban exchange too. So this person's a scammer. And Financial Bro, all three of these accounts, I would be very worried about if you are following them. Just be careful. But let's better understand what's going on here. Swift, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, is not a traditional company that simply could be bought out. It's a member-owned cooperative headquartered in Belgium, controlled by thousands of financial institutions worldwide. It's not just like a board of, one or two people that would say, hey, you know what, we'll sell the Ripple for 10 billion. The system's probably worth a few hundred billion, but we'll take 10, right? Swift's ownership structure means its shares are held by its member banks and financial institutions. Its shares are not publicly traded and are not eligible for financial institutions to become shareholders. There is no credible evidence or reporting that Ripple or any entity could acquire Swift outright in exchange for XRP or any other asset. The scenario described in the document is speculative and not supported by industry news or Swift's governance model. And then I said, can a company buy Swift's banking system? Direct acquisition, no private company can simply buy Swift. In the cooperative owned by its members, banks, and financial institutions, and its shares are not available for public purchase or corporate takeover. Eligibility, only certain types of regulated financial institutions can become Swift shareholders subject to strict eligibility criteria and regulatory oversight. Interesting. This makes me wonder and believe if Ripple becomes a bank, could they in fact become a Swift partner, right? Could they become a shareholder if they're eligible? I'm going to go look into that for you. Legal and regulatory hurdles. Even a company could theoretically acquire all member shares, which is not practically impossible, but such a move would face immense regulatory scrutiny from central banks and financial regulators. So this would mean like one company buying all of these banks that are partnered in this Swift system, right? If one person or one entity controlled all of these banks, they could then control Swift, but they were saying central banks and financial regulators worldwide would have a problem with that. What would the cost be? If you could do this? Valuation estimates. Swift's value is difficult to pinpoint due to its unique structure, and available estimates put it at value around $5.5 billion in 2023. Hard to think that Swift's system is only worth $5.5 billion, right? Swift transaction volume processes 150 trillion in transactions annually, but figure represents transaction flow, not the value of the company itself. But you would have to buy all of the banks, right? I would think all of the banks would be more than 5.5 billion. I think this is just a very hard thing to research. Hypothetical buyout. Even if it were possible, the cost would be determined by negotiations among thousands of global financial institutions, right? Thousands of global financial institutions. Every single one of them would want a piece. They would want something in return. 5.5 billion just doesn't sound like enough, right? Everyone's going to get $10 million to do this, right? Banks would laugh. I just don't think any of this stuff is even close. So Ripple and Swift, the real relationship, competition, no, not acquisition. Ripple and its token XRP are positioned as alternatives or complements to Swift for cross-border payments, aiming to provide faster and cheaper transactions. Ripple's CEO has discussed capturing a share of Swift transaction volume, not acquiring the organization itself. Adoption scenarios. Some analysts speculate about XRP being used for liquidity in global payments, which could increase XRP's value, but this is distinct from buying Swift. All right, I also have some information here about Swift volume. I wanted to take a look at, has Swift volume been slowing down as more countries move to the ISO standard, as more countries start using, digital payments, blockchain technology for cross-border or FX? Is that having an effect on Swift's overall volume flows? Here we go. 2024, Swift continued to process a high volume of cross-border payments. As of late 2024, 90% of Swift's cross-border payments on the Swift network reached the beneficiary bank within 1 hour. So they have sped up payments tremendously. 90% of all payments in 2024 got to where they needed to go in 1 hour. The issue here is the cost, right? Yes, you're speeding up payments, but you're still being charged an arm and a leg. Swift network reached the beneficiary bank within 1 hour, well ahead of the G20's 2027 speed target. The euro and the US dollar remained dominant, accounting for 70% of Swift payments worldwide. 2025, Swift's migration to ISO standard accelerated with 41.2% of payment instructions using the new format as of May 2025. So 41% of Swift payments right now are already using ISO 20022. This is why I said when the federal government moves tomorrow to ISO, I don't see a move like a big jump in the payment happening on that day, because you already have data showing that this is already live, this is already being used, and we haven't seen a big spike in that. We've only seen the speculation spike. So here you go, May 2020, any projections aiming for 80%, 86% by November 2025. Daily average payment instructions via Swift's Fin Plus system rose to 1.8 million in May 2025, up 79% from May 2024. However, the overall share of Swift in global cross-border payment volume has not shown a dramatic decline. Both growth rates are being challenged by new technologies. You're talking about impact of crypto stablecoins and cross-border payments, institutional adoption. By mid-2025, 90% of financial institutions were actively integrating stablecoins. If 90% of financial institutions are actively integrating stablecoins into their businesses, 90%. 9 out of every 10 financial institutions. This is the growth that we are about to see. The trillions of dollars that is estimated to grow over the next few years. This is the reason why you're seeing those numbers. With 49% using them for payments and 58% of traditional banks prioritizing cross-border stablecoin transfers. Regional trends. Latin America leads in adoption with 71% of institutions using stablecoins for cross-border payments. Asia and North America are also seeing rapid increases driven by regulatory clarity and infrastructure improvements. Transaction volumes in 2024, stablecoins processed 27.6 trillion in transaction volume, surpassing Visa and MasterCard. Stablecoins are already bigger than Visa and MasterCard. Pretty crazy, right? Payment infrastructure, real-time payment systems, and blockchain-based solutions are reducing reliance on Swift, especially for high-volume B2B and remittance corridors. Is Swift losing market share? Swift's position. While Swift remains the backbone of the most institutional cross-border payments, the pace of growth is slowing, and alternative rails, especially stablecoins and real-time payment networks, gain traction. Market shift. The rise of stablecoins and blockchain infrastructure is most pronounced in emerging markets and high-cost corridors where traditional correspondence banking is less competitive. Forecast. Swift's share of cross-border payments is expected to gradually decrease, especially for smaller value and retail transactions. As crypto and stablecoin solutions become more mainstream, however, Swift's adoption of ISO 20022 is ongoing, and modernization effort are helping to retain relevance of high value regulated payments. You're also missing, regulation for digital assets too. I think banks like Bank of America have made their voices known that once they feel like they are able to use the technology, that they will. That is when we'll see kind of what we're looking at. Will a big change come for the price of XRP? Will it be used on a massive scale? This is what we're waiting to see. Obviously, banks and financial institutions want to save money and speed up payments. When do you think the change will come from traditional rails to the new real-time gross settlement systems? Here, this is what is interesting. I asked Perplexity what it thought about this, and the dates it gave me were pretty interesting. 2025, a pivotal year. Critical juncture. 2025 is widely recognized as the turning point. Banks that implement real-time payments capabilities will now secure a competitive edge. Adoption rates. By 2028, 70 to 80% of financial institutions are expected to have real-time payment reception capabilities. Volume growth. Instant payments are projected to make up 16% of global payments mix by 2027, rising to 22% rising to 22% by 2028. Corporate adoption: over 2/3 of US companies plan to join real-time networks like RTP or FedNow within the next 2 years. Here's some trends, regional trends. Europe leading in instant payments, with West Europe expected to account for 38% of global payments. Europe is doing it right. Love to see that. Asia Pacific, rapid adoption, especially in markets like Singapore, India, China, driven by government initiatives and mobile payment penetration. North America, the US is catching up with its launch of the FedNow system and increased real-time payment network participation, but adoption has been slower due to system fragmentation. Emerging markets, Latin America and parts of Africa are leapfrogging legacy systems by adopting instant payment infrastructure directly. What to expect? We expect a gradual but accelerating shift into instant real-time cross-border payments, guys. So much really great information I went through there. Actually, I hadn't thought to put all of this together and show it to you in one thing like this. I'm glad I did. It makes a lot more sense now to me. And I learned a lot through this, research session. I hope you did too. I did want to take a look at what would happen if a Ripple took over 15, 25, 50%, or 100% of Swift's volume. And, here are some of the numbers, right? If you're wondering. 15. This was 14 was referenced by Brad Garlinghouse. Remember that he gave a random number of 14%. So you'd be looking at anywhere from $200 to $500 expected price range. If they can get even more, you'd be looking at 500 or higher. But we'll have to see how this plays out. Key AI models, this is Grok AI, DeepSeek AI, and other models. I'm not going to read all this to you guys. If you want to pause the screen and read it, I just want to wish you a truly, truly fantastic day. We have a big week ahead. These are the 5 things you should look out for this week. Markets react to EU-Mexico tariffs on Monday, June CPI inflation data on Tuesday, June PPI inflation on Wednesday, June retail sales data on Thursday, July MI consumer sentiment data on Friday, a total of 12 Fed speakers events this week. So if this data comes back good, markets will soar higher. If this data comes back and people are not super excited about it, that could affect markets this week in general. Please pay attention to these things. I hope you're learning a lot. Thank you so much for being here. Have a fantastic rest of your Monday. Crypto Sensei, aloha! Nothing in this video should be taken as financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. Please seek financial advice if you need it. Let's get back to the video.